Thank you for being here with us. I feel so privileged to have all these wonderful people here that's going to make a contribution, but also all of you, because we always feel different because of who is here. And I would like to say that climate change needs creativity. Artists are so-called the pinnacle of creativity, but let's not forget that what Joseph Beuys said, and often is not recognized for it, everyone is an artist. And how important that is for climate change. Because although we have artists using the height of their craft to help us to engage, it is that awakening of creativity at every level within the ordinary person that we will have this force for change. And a force that is about passion. Because let me say this, there's so many things of priority in our lives in the 21st century that without passion, we will not make it. Because passion makes us focus on climate change through our love for nature and our love for people. And the other dimension that I like to talk about the arts is that we've been talking about now about the interconnected world, about a globalized world of different cultures, with people like Veronica with us here. And what does this mean, the interconnectedness? We want genuine interconnectedness, not cultural tourism. Oh, they're very interesting, or they're very beautiful, or whatever. And part of the art's role is to make that connection quite beyond intellectual understanding and facts to all those so-called elusive qualities that we can't even put a name to. And perhaps one of the greatest ways of doing it through words is poetry. So I'm going to cast an atmosphere, I hope, over you all by reciting a very short Zen-like poem. A poem not to understand, a poem not to think about, a poem to feel, a poem to expand your consciousness into that territory of genuine connection that builds a bridge into different cultures. So here it is, a very Zen-like, very short poem. Today, I went swallowing skies to feed my being. The seagulls cried, wild against the sliding of the tide. Why, of all nature, have you chosen to swallow emptiness? So I hope that that moves something in you, planting a seed that will grow and unfold to bridge consciousness between cultures, a real beginning, not intellectualized, to fill in all those gaps which culture is about and which the art's strength is, through all the mediums of awakening, of expansion, so that we truly connect. And now with all these wonderful people around me, I'm going to just go through all of them, just calling them by their first name, because some of the names, I don't want to pronounce them wrong. It is very bad to do that culturally. And I hope that they will, within that very short time of 5 minutes, share some of that magic of what they want to say to you in the context of the arts and climate change. May I start with Veronica, who will gift us with the sound of their language. That in itself is communication. So although it's translated, you will have that gift of connection through the sound of her voice. Veronica, from the Chihuahua in Ecuador.
Karulyaktamanda kaimashamushkani puri puri rasha guasi guasipi. He hecho un canto que he llegado desde lejos a hacer escuchar las voces de mi árbol, de mi agua, de mi río que está ahorita en peligro. He venido a hacer escuchar las voces de los seres microscópicos que existen en mi casa, que es la Pachamama.
offer you the song that brings the voices of our trees, voices of my rivers that are threatened, voices of the microscopic beings in our forest, and to bring you this song to open you, to connect you with Pachamama.
Hoy estamos aquí, hermanos de todo el mundo. Digo hermanos porque todos vivimos en este pequeño planeta.
Today, I'm here with you all. I call you all my brothers and sisters. I say that because we share this beautiful small planet.
Y desde cada uno de los espacios, así sea un pintor, una poeta, así sea un cantante, una actriz, nosotros en la defensa, así una mujer sembrando una yuca, un hombre ayudando. Creo que todas las voces y sobre todo de los jóvenes, de los niños, es la esperanza de hoy.
So whether you are an artist, a painter, a poet, a singer, an actor, whether you're a woman in our territories cultivating yucca, whether you're a man helping in the woods, whether you're young people, we're coming together for a message of hope.
Decirles que hoy es el momento de salvar a nuestra Pachamama.
It's the moment to save Pachamama.
Porque si dejamos para mañana es muy tarde.
If we wait till tomorrow, it'll be too late.
En cada uno de ustedes les dejo ese deber de que protejamos donde quiera que estemos.
In each of you, I call on you to connect with protecting the place that you're from, the place you're connected to, wherever that is.
Nosotros desde nuestro pueblito, desde nuestra comunidad, seguiremos haciendo lo que hacía mi ancestro.
In our community, I'm continuing to do what my ancestors have done, defending our territories.
Y por eso tenemos una iniciativa muy buena, que es Cuenca Sagrada. Todo es sagrado para nosotros, hasta la palabra dicha es sagrado, como lo decían mis antepasados.
And so I bring you here my initiative that we're a part of called the Sacred Headwaters Initiative. It's really because everything for us is sacred. Even the word sacred is sacred.
Ellos no firmaban papeles, solo la voz valía.
Our ancestors didn't sign papers. Their voice and their word is what mattered.
Por eso invito a ustedes a que unamos estas fuerzas juntos, hombres, mujeres, quienes estamos acá, unámonos pero de corazón, cambiemos nuestra vida desde la casa y luego cambiará el mundo.
So that's why I call on all of you, all of us, women, men, to unite from our hearts, connect from our place of our hearts, and to make the changes, the transformation that is needed from your very own homes all the way to the planet.
Y por último, podrán tener mucho dinero, pero luego no les servirá de nada, porque el agua estará contaminada. Las culturas vivas, quienes habitamos ahí, estaremos extintos y sobre todo nuestro planeta nos eliminará, así como eliminó a los dinosaurios. Y estamos nosotros ahí, los seres vivos.
So money, of course, money is something that the culture is focused on, but money, what good is money if we're here to basically, we're going to lose our home and contaminate our rivers. You can't drink money. Once our rivers are polluted, our cultures disappear and our forest is gone, then we as humans will be extinct. We'll go by the way of the dinosaurs. And so what good is money? What we really need is to focus on life.
Por eso los jóvenes estamos haciendo una escuelita también de corazones, donde queremos que la filosofía nuestra, ustedes también lo conozcan.
So we have an initiative to start the school a school of the hearts of the sacred headwaters. It's where we can teach our own youth about our philosophies of our traditions, but also to teach the world about our traditions.
Y les invito a ser más seres humanos.
And
Y dejen el decir solo yo. No, es momento de decir todos unidos vamos a hacer esta voz fuerte que nuestra Pachamama nos pide.
we need to unite our voices. More of us need to be calling for the protection of Pachamama, our Mother Earth, and only through unity we're going to do that.
Pagracho.
Thank you in Quechua. Pagaracho.
Thank you so much to Veronica. And now may I ask Sam to make his contribution. At first I was going to get them to introduce themselves, but I think that's almost a distraction. Let's get on with the substance of the stuff. You can look them up on the internet. So Sam.
Thank you, Judy. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Veronica. It's a privilege to sit in this constellation, to sit between the voice and the song of the Americas, and also between the music industry of Britain. And I sit somewhere somewhere on that dial. And I'm going to leave it up to Chiara to maybe speak far more eloquently about the role of British music and what's going on here in the engagement with the climate and ecological emergency. I'm a founder member alongside Chiara of Music Declares Emergency. However, I'd like to speak maybe about some local sacred headwaters, which is really my musical lineage and the place that I come from. We're very fortunate in this country to have an extraordinary rich musical heritage, vernacular song that speaks so eloquently and so richly and full of love of our land and of our nature and of our home in a way with deep reverence. My apprenticeship as a musician came from a Scottish traveller up northeast in Aberdeenshire upon the rivers Dee, the Royal River Dee and the River Don, and the headwaters in the pools of Dee. And those rivers are amazing reservoirs of old knowledge, old song. And in my time apprenticed to the last of essentially in many ways our indigenous community, the nomadic people of the Scottish travellers, the Irish travellers and the English gypsies, have learnt from a great repertoire of songs that speaks very much about our accountability to the land, and implicitly and occasionally explicitly within the lyrics, songs that detail our dependence and our devotion. They are our prayers for the land. I don't often get to speak about folk song with language like that, but in context of where we are and the communities that are here right now, I think it's very important that we honour that British Indigenous song is a devotional music, and within it holds such a connection to our ancestral relationship to the land. And those songs hold, I think, a really exciting entry point into ways that we can see what our responsibility is to the land and how we can inherit a deep love of the fauna, the flora, the contours of our land, and the gentle relationships that exist there. Folk song is our source song, but I think it also holds within it a point of reference that the music is such a powerful way that we can help reconnect, re-enchant our communities today who've been through such complex reasons, disconnected from the land, disenfranchised. Scotland has a terrible legacy of that, as does England. The enclosures, the clearances, that we have a forced divorce that has left enormous trauma, and music is a wonderful form of healing. And it's a wonderful gatherer of community, and I'm really excited at the way that the music world at the moment is returning back to an appreciation of nature, finding very inspiring new ways to express and explore and play with that relationship. And we don't have such a strong inherited form of tradition in our engagement in that relationship, but we are also able to learn from our Indigenous cousins and brothers and sisters and create our own new ones. And the creativity, particularly here in Glasgow and in Scotland, is so inspiring, seeing that within the folk music and within the contemporary music. So I guess I feel there's a great future of how music can be the muse, return to being a place of the muse within the artistic process. I'll end there. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So even in this session, creativity is making connections, which is beautiful to see. And now I invite Atossa to speak about what she wants to say.
So I'm Atossa Soltani, and I've been a forest activist, a lover of the Amazon since 1990, my first time there. And I would say that I've had the honor of being with Indigenous peoples in the last 3 decades, learning and listening to the land. And one of the transformative experiences I had in my activism was doing a council of all beings with Joanna Macy and John Seed, two heroes of mine, that connected me to the mind of Gaia and to be able to hear Gaia in the work that I do. So while I'm a campaigner and a strategist, I see storytelling as a key strategy. And the organization I founded, Amazon Watch, continues to be a storyteller for justice and Indigenous rights. And recently, I also helped found something called Artists for Amazonia, which you can all check out at artistsforamazonia.org. During the fires of 2019, when we saw the huge deforestation surge, where we saw the destruction of the Brazilian Amazon, I just felt like we were shouting, those dreams you have where you're shouting, but nothing's coming out. That's where it felt like. We were a collective of activists who were shouting, and it felt like nobody was hearing us. And then all of a sudden, there was a moment, there was an opening, something happened, and the world began to pay attention. Our servers crashed. We had 2,000 emails an hour. We were just inundated. And we realized that we needed to ride this wave to wake up humanity. Because as I do, believe that Gaia is this living system of which we ourselves, we have a host. Gaia is alive. We have a host. And that just like every cell in your body knows how to keep you alive, how to how to collaborate and cooperate and be in synergy and have a collective intelligence to keep your body alive. The Gaia is coming through to all of us. I mean, we're all hearing the call. So we started Artists for Amazonia to amplify that. And also with the Sacred Headwaters, which is the day-to-day work that I do every day with this initiative to elevate the importance of the Amazon, but also the importance of culture, this interweave between culture and nature. The fact is that the places that are most culturally diverse are also the places that are most biologically diverse. There is this interweave of nature and culture, and it's only our Western mind that's separated. But in the eyes of Indigenous peoples, all is kin, everything's my relation. And so looking at the biodiversity of the Amazon, it's telling the story of this largest collection of living things. The fact that we have, in 1 hectare of rainforest, more species of trees than all of North America. In 1 tree in the Amazon, more species of ants than all of the UK. This incredible collection of wealth, of richness, is creativity. Ultimately, my philosophy is that all creativity goes back to nature. Nature is creative, and we are nature. And so we are nature defending ourselves, and that the creativity that's coming through is the force of the creativity of the living systems of the earth speaking through us. Veronica is the voice, the forest is speaking through her. we are all voices, and so we need to amplify our voices, and we need to basically use that creative force of nature to tell powerful transformational stories. And the stories are that we are connected. The Amazon generates atmospheric rivers that drive rainfall all over the planet. People here, the Amazon consider it the heart, the lungs of the world, in the way it absorbs CO2 and breathes out oxygen. But the Amazon is also the heart that generates weather systems and rainfall and connects us all. In fact, the rains come here. The earth is cycling and circulating, and the circulation system is here. And the most fantastic stories that we can tell is the story of how nature cooperates and harmonizes to create conditions conducive to life flourishing. And that's what we need to model in our human systems, in our climate action, in our governance system, in our economic system, and certainly creativity is a channel to do that. And I'll end by saying, this is one of the fantastic stories that inspired me. And of course, every time I tell stories, people are like, oh, that could be a movie. I'm like, there's so many stories in the Amazon that are movies. But also stories of looking from the, at a planetary scale. The Amazon loses, because of the rain, it loses phosphorus. Hundreds and tens of millions of tons of phosphorus wash out away into the ocean every year. And phosphorus is what the trees need to do photosynthesis. And so, but lo and behold, there are dust storms over the Sahara that bring phosphorus-rich dust and replenish the Amazon so that the forest can continue to flourish. Now, if that's not creativity, harmony of a planetary scale, I don't know what is. So I leave you with that.
Thank you. Now, may I ask Brian to weave his magic into all of this?
Thank you. I guess what interests me is whether artists can do anything to help with the climate change story. And if you look at the program of COP as it stands on this occasion, and probably in earlier ones, the belief is obviously that they can't. There's very little attention to culture or artists here. And that reflects the problem we see in our education system, where schools are being told that they should prioritize STEM subjects, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, because arts subjects don't give you jobs with such high salaries. So some of you may have seen a couple of weeks ago that a Conservative minister said that they were no longer prioritizing funding for arts subjects because arts graduates don't earn as much money as science and technology graduates, and therefore can't repay their student loans. So this is the reason for, and of course the answer to that is then don't make bloody student loans, make education free, but that of course is a step too far. But what I think is necessary now is for artists to start developing some arguments for why art matters, what difference it makes to us. And we've been, as artists, we've been conspicuously bad at doing that, I think. We sort of assume that we deserve to exist regardless of whether we're any use or not. I think that all of us understand what science does and why it exists. Science is a way of understanding, making sense of the world, if you like, finding how we can use it, how we can be used by it, what we can do with it. And a lot, of course, of what we're talking here at COP is science, effectively. But if you ask most people to articulate what art does, they won't have anywhere near as clear an answer. So it's been a project of mine for a long time to try to make some kind of an answer. And 5 minutes isn't long to give that answer in, but I shall have a go. So I think what artists are doing, one of the many things they're doing, is creating other possible worlds. Those worlds can either be positive worlds, like more desirable realities, ways of presenting worlds that could be, perhaps not utopias, but improvements on this one, and saying to you, what do you feel about that? And what would you have to do to pull your world more towards that? I think that's one of the things that Sam is talking about. You know, one of the things of folk music is very much the presentation of beautiful summer mornings, and it was pleasant and delightful on a midsummer's day. You know, that kind of image that you find so much in folk music. Creating images like that creates a kind of magnet for our feelings. We think, that's a world I would like to be in. And we make a comparison between that world and the world we are in. And by simply doing that, by looking at a model, we start to imagine how things could be better. It motivates us to make things better, to pull towards that world. Of course, other forms of art create dystopias, like Brave New World and 1984 and The Matrix, those things. They're all images of worlds that we probably wouldn't want to live in. And they're similarly important because they promote a set of feelings where we say, that isn't the world I want. And then we start to define by doing that the kind of world we do want again. So we're always working, I think, when we're listening to or looking at or reading art, we're always making a comparison between what could exist and what does exist. And that comparison invites action on our part. It invites the formulation of procedures of some kind. Now, that seems to me just about the most important thing that humans do. This is where our creativity comes from. Creativity comes from imagining something that could exist that doesn't exist now. That's the definition of the word. And we understand how scientists do that. We see scientists, you know, they want to build a bridge. They start by making a model of the bridge. That's what artists are doing. They're making models of other ways of being, other ways of feeling, other ways of thinking. It's just as important to me as science, but it has a slightly different slant. I often think that science discovers, but art digests. So science presents new possibilities, new ways of knowing about the world, ways of quantifying it, manipulating it, but it doesn't tell you how to feel about any of that. By definition, science doesn't do that. That isn't the job of science. It's art that does that. It's art that shows you those things and puts them into a sort of fictional capsule, if you like, and says, how does that feel to you? So a big part of this is feelings. And of course, feelings don't enter into the world of conservative education ministers because they can't be quantified. And that old mindset of quantification, exams and making lists of things and saying this one is at the top of the list, so that's the best one. And increasingly that's done on purely financial terms. It's very counter where we want to be going at the moment, I think. Quantification isn't the answer isn't the way of dealing with feelings. They're very hard to quantify, so science generally leaves them out. But now we're starting to, there's a new book by a writer called Mark Solms called The Hidden Spring. It's a new theory of consciousness. It's a very good book. Please read it. And what he's saying is that feelings are the beginning of thinking. They're not something different from thinking. They are the beginning of thinking. Feelings is where our thoughts come from. And this, to me, is the strongest argument for the arts as a procedure that should be incorporated into education. I think I've probably spoken for too long, so I shall stop now.
Very good. Thank you. Now I would like to ask Chiara to speak to us.
Thank you, and hi everyone. I'm a stand-in for Alison, but I hope I'll do her justice. I come at this from a place which starts off with a recognition that art is also not just storytelling and it's not just creativity. And when we look at art, we also have institutions, we have creative businesses around that, we have policy frameworks that have been created around that. And so our work at Julie's Bicycle is very much about trying to shift some of those institutions and frameworks and recognizing also that everything that exists and that we've created around art often is not in harmony with where we want to and need to be to meet the climate crisis. And so how do we begin to rewire that? How do we begin to get art to also take responsibility for how it is upholding systems of exploitation, how it is contributing to carbon emissions, and how the practices of working that we have in the arts are not necessarily getting us to the transformation that we want to achieve. And so I think a lot of that comes from how we get people, not just artists included, but also everyone who works in arts and culture, to start doing, taking action, and in doing that, starting to rewire the way that we create context for artists in which they can also do their work. And I think the reason that's so important for us is really has been touched on by everyone who's spoken, because it's about creating that empowering context in which artists can step forward and in which also the whole creative movement globally can feel connected, even though we're all working in these different contexts, but can feel empowered to step forward and speak out on climate with one voice. And so that's really where some of the campaigns that we work on as well, with like Music Declares Emergency, come from as well, which is how do we bring everyone together around these shared ideas so that everyone's voices can ring out louder. And I will keep it there.
Thank you, Kia. Now, Kit, may I ask you to make your contribution?
Yes. Hello. Hello, my name is Kit. And I approach creativity kind of in a different way. So I just finished my master's studying biodesign. And that essentially, nobody knows what biodesign. I tell people I do biodesign, they're like, cool, but I don't know what it is. And basically, I will give an example of a project that I've done. But biodesign is any form of design, whether it's fashion design or systems design or any form of design that is informed by science, particularly biology, but for me it was more ecology. So an example of a project that I did, it was called Algae Vodka, which we kind of rebranded as Blimey. Thank you, that was a good idea. But essentially it was taking waste from the vodka industry, which is high in nitrates and phosphates, which you were talking about earlier about the trees needing to grow. Taking that waste, which otherwise would have just been, like it's just effluent, so it would have run into water and probably caused an algal bloom. So you take that waste and you actually, in a concentrated environment, you grow algae. Grow it up and they eat all the nitrates and the phosphates. And then from that algae, you then produce vodka again. Because algae, not all strains of algae, but they are high in starch, which is essentially sugar. And that is exactly the same way that we produce vodka normally, which is from potatoes. Or, it tends to be from potatoes. So the idea is that it's closed loop. So the algae, the algal biomass at the end of that is then turned into the packaging, and you can make inks out of algae. So I created this concept that hasn't quite come to life yet, of this closed loop regenerative system. So you're avoiding the creation of algal blooms and creating a product that is very tasty and desirable and cool. So that was the idea, that was the product. But I think the issue is that it's a very seductive, it's quite sexy, I think it's quite cool. But we are at this point where we don't really have very much time. In these social, economic, political, climate, biodiversity crises, we don't have time. And I think that a project like that, was really fun to create, but actually it's not good enough, and I feel like maybe a lot of young people have this at the time. Maybe just everybody has this at this time, where nothing that we do is good enough because it's so big. The magnitude of this problem is daunting. So you're like, I would love to do that, but it's not good enough. And that thinking ends up being really paralyzing. And that is what brought me back to the arts again, because exactly what you were saying, what everybody has been saying, is that the power of art is actually expression, and it gives you room to express an emotion, and you might not even know what that emotion is yet. But maybe you're just, scribbling on a piece of paper, whatever it is, singing, shouting, running. I don't like running and singing. They come together with me. Anyway, sorry, distracted. Yes. So for me, that's like the first point of creativity. That's like the power of the arts. But the second thing, and again, this is kind of how I approach all of my projects, is to contextualize. And again, I was saying about social, political, all of these crises that we are in. And like right now, we are at COP, and why are we here? Maybe not us, maybe not me, but all of those people, wherever they are, at the table. Well, yes. We're here for international cooperation. And that is collaboration, that is hearing, that is negotiating. And I think that is kind of what my biodesign teaching has taught me, which is the power of working within, so science, design, ecology, everything. It's the cross-pollination of minds, and the power of art and all of the arts. It's, for me, I find it that it's the non-verbal forms of communication, because somebody can get up and dance, they don't say a word, and everybody feels something from them, but they haven't said anything. And I think what's so frustrating is that there's so much talk, but there's nothing. And so I think the power, art is just a way of communicating in a very, it's a very powerful way of communicating. But I just wanted to say, yes, I just want to say at the end is that we all have a unique set of skills, and right now, whether exactly what Judy was saying at the beginning, like we are all creative, whether it's a masterpiece that you produce or something absolutely crap, doesn't matter, because we all have a unique set of skills, and I just think it's right now it's like just go, and remember to look back at what people have done, look at what now everybody's doing, and look ahead at where you want to go, and then. I think we say we're going to move forward, but I think like a mushroom, we got to go out in every direction and just attack in a really positive way, in a very good, peaceful attack. And I think, that's the power of the arts for me. Yes.
Thank you so much for this very rich discussion. We now go into 10 minutes of panel discussion, and my phone has just died. I no longer have timing. So if you can just raise your hand when we're moving towards 10 minutes, because I'm very keen to give our audience also 10 minutes for their questions, because that is really important, that we make that connection and the questions. And I would like to really stimulate this discussion by one or two thoughts from listening to you all. I was a friend of the daughter of Sir John Vane, the Nobel Prize winner of chemistry for studying anticoagulants. And he once said to me when he was very frustrated about the image of science, he says, it's all the fault of applied scientists. Because he says the true creators in science, they are poets. They reach into the unknown. They're inspired, and yet they need to pull that into reality and make it work. And in a way, that continuity of the pinnacle of arts and practicality is what we're talking about that can be powerful in creativity. That creativity can take any form. You can be creating through economic processes, which Joseph Beuys proposes. He says that anyone who uses creativity in life, and purposefully, he was all about sustainability, he says if purposefully use creativity, you are a social sculptor, seeing society as a malleable mass that you can sculpt. So many of us here are already social sculptors or budding social sculptors, because we want you to use this to be purposeful with your creativity. Because creativity is not just about products in art, but process. In the language, it tells us so. There's the art of cooking, There's even the art of walking. So all this continuity is what gives us power to use the forms and the processes of life to move forward. So what are the thoughts from listening to everybody in this panel? Would Veronica like to give us her thoughts first? We have about 2 minutes each.
Sí, bueno, para nosotros es muy importante el arte porque al hablar de arte hablamos de cultura. El arte para nosotros es muy importante.
For us, the arts is important. It's when you're talking about the arts for us, you're talking about culture.
Nosotros tenemos el arte en los cánticos que mis abuelos transmitían eso, que para nosotros estar en mi territorio y sembrar una planta para que la yuca o el plátano o una planta crezca, ese espíritu estaba ahí, ese es arte para nosotros también. Y el arte de compartir con diferentes personas. El arte está en el poema, el arte está en poder compartir, en poder conocernos. Todo es arte.
We don't separate art from everything else. For us, everything, the art is in everything. Art of, for example, for us to cultivate yucca in the garden, my ancestors would sing, and they teach us to sing to the plant so that the plant can grow, because the plant has a spirit, and you can sing to that spirit of the plant and make it grow further. And that, you know, for us, the songs, the art is in the art of sharing, sitting around, getting to know one another. It's the art of sharing, the art of knowing one another, the art of connecting to one another.
Sí, el arte está en la historia de cada uno de los pueblos. El pintar una mocagua, el hacer un cuadro. El arte también es transmitir lo que hoy hacemos y lo vamos a contar en la casa. Eso es arte para nosotros. Y arte también es ir y sembrar un árbol, plantar, porque eso va a quedar para tu hijo y mi hijo y para las futuras generaciones.
The art comes in many forms for us. It's really drawing, the drawings, the patterns that we draw, the patterns that we share within our own culture, like the cultural patterns. We have the planting. For us, the art of planting. You know, it's an art to be able to cultivate trees, certain kinds of silviculture, you know, forests that are planting those rich gardens that then can bear fruit for years to come. So it's all for us, the art.
Thank you. So Sam, would you like to grab your 2 minutes and say something?
Say something, or in response to that, or through song itself, or
Actually, he says he wants to sing.
well, I can do. I sort of feel like maybe at the end. Would that be or now? Do you want?
So if
Just
you don't want to say anything, but grab your 2 minutes at the end, that's fine.
I'll save that to the end.
He's going to do that. And I think going out with a song would be wonderful. Thank you. So, Brian.
Okay, I want to talk briefly about the idea of play, because I think play unifies a lot of these things. You know, we're all used to the idea that children learn by playing. Nobody would question that. And in fact, the best educational systems are based on the idea of creating situations where children can play in order to learn specific things. At a certain point in a child's education, we tell them to stop playing and start taking exams. And so there's this distinction made between being serious, being grown up, and playing, which is associated with being childish. That is a very bad idea, because playing is all that artists and scientists do. That's what art and science is. Art and science is play for grown-ups. So I often say children learn by playing, but adults play through art. or science. And you have to go through this awful education system that tells you to stop doing it in order to learn again that that's exactly what you have to do. So you have to go through this bottleneck, which a lot of people, of course, feel rejected by and no longer participate in. Oh, I can't sing a song. I'm not creative at all. I have no idea how mathematics works. Those kinds of thoughts. Of course, we all can do those things, actually. We can do them to different standards, but we can all do them. So I would like to put an umbrella term over all of the activities that we currently call art and science, or culture, if you like, and call it play.
Thank you. I've often thought to myself that artists are basically adults who have never forgotten how to play.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And I have to keep relearning. You have to keep...
Against the tide.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, Chiara?
I guess the thing that's coming through for me so strongly is again this recognition of everything that we do as arts and creative practice, and how much that matters in this moment, because we are in this place where we have to reimagine and remake so many of the systems and around us, whether that is around energy, whether it is around housing, food, everything else. Remake, undo, rebuild. And again, that importance for me, so much of what happens in the arts, I'm slightly stealing this from a discussion that we had on Friday with Ez Devlin, the designer, and a brilliant musician from Indonesia called Nova Ruth. They were talking about how art is also about making the improbable happen and making it very real and tangible. And I think shifting away from just thinking about artists, there are so many other people who are involved in making art happen, who are so good at making the improbable happen. Production managers, people working behind the scenes who can make the most incredible things happen just on a wish, a bit of hope, a bit of gaffer tape, a little bit of timber here or there, and sort of how we can get to a place where we really recognize that blurred line between art and practice, and how we activate and empower everyone to be working towards this transition that we're in.
Good.
I would like to kind of just encourage people to go outside more. Because whenever I have a creative block or any sort of, like, I'm writing an email, I'm like, I don't know how to write this, I just go for a walk and go outside, and I'll work it out. And new ideas come to me, and it's all about stimuli, but like, good stimuli. I don't know when I go for a walk in the city, it still happens because it's fresh air, and when the wind blows, I'm like, thank you, get rid of everything. But it's being outside, and and I hate saying being in nature, because that's just wrong. That doesn't work anymore. That doesn't make sense nowadays, really. But yeah, I have nothing more to say than listening to all of us, just being outside and playing on the play. Just like slow down and sit with a beetle, I don't know, but just chill with a slug for a while. And I really mean that, because they're so weird and quite disgusting. And I don't know. I think there's inspiration everywhere. When you're outside, for me.
Very nice.
And I think
We should take away that purposeful act of chilling with a slug. Yeah? So now questions from our wonderful audience. Would you like to first of all who wants to direct a question to Veronica?
Can I just say, if anybody is really tired of standing up, there is room to sit down here.
Yes. Do sit down, lie down.
yeah. Oh, we can
Get into creative positions. Yes, please come. So, or anybody else, a question. I want a question, please. Any questions?
Here's one.
Yes.
I would be interested, so listening to you speak, I heard you talk about art and an artistic way of engaging with nature in a reverent way, with a reverence for nature. And I'm interested to hear how you consider the role of play in that sort of space, in that reverent space.
¿Cómo se puede jugar en este espacio de
Does that make sense?
honrando la naturaleza y jugando mismo vez?
No entiendo la pregunta.
Can you repeat again? Can you do
Yeah.
like a questions I can translate?
Yeah. So I'm interested to know how you consider or experience the role of play when you're engaging artistically with nature with an amount of reverence. So maybe to give a bit of context, I walked with a group of people 500 miles from London to COP. And the aim of that was to listen to the land. And we talked a lot about the balance between reverence for nature and experiencing joy, and the balance between those things.
¿Cuál es el punto medio para decir sobre cómo tener esa referencia? O cualquier cosa sobre lo sagrado para ti.
Para mí, no es que solo yo lo hago, son mocaguas, vasijas cerámicas que salen de nuestros sueños, de nuestras batallas, salen de las mujeres, de los niños, y para nosotros eso es conexión. Son historias, cuentos, cánticos, porque todo tiene vida para nosotros, desde el respeto al urco, a la loma, el respeto a nuestro cielo, a nuestro sol, y nosotros eso venimos respetando, porque todo para nosotros es respeto, la palabra, como decía, el cántico, los escritos, pero nuestro pueblo solo transmitía generación tras generación, solo es empírico, solo es hablado, oral, tradicionalmente. Entonces, por eso no tenemos escrito. Pero la lucha es fuerte y para nosotros todo es sueño. Mis antepasados, ellos mediante una planta ayahuasca tomaron y vieron esto, que nosotros, los pueblos indígenas, los que vivimos lejos, porque yo vengo de un lugar muy lejos, donde es 3 días para llegar a Ecuador y de Ecuador venir acá, ¿no? Entonces, esto es arte, el encontrarnos pueblos de todo el mundo, que estamos aquí ahora luchando por una sola consigna en la COP. Y esto traer, y el arte es muy importante y se está perdiendo. El idioma, se está perdiendo tradiciones de todos los pueblos y sobre todo se está perdiendo el amor entre seres humanos. Y ese enlace queremos hacer ahora, entre todos.
Tú me puedes ayudar si olvido algo. So, the women, the children, the people in my community, we are people of dreams. A lot of our art is inspired by our dreams. For example, in our dreams, we see patterns and we create pottery out of those patterns. Our pottery, even kids can do it, and they're inspired by our chants, and our chants were passed on by our ancestors. And that in those chants, there's respect for everything. There's respect for the sky, for the earth, for the rivers, for the forest. and that our chants represent legends and these oral stories of our history. But our history was never written down, so everything's oral. So those chants really are transmitting history, and they're helping us to understand our place in the cosmos. And how we see, we also use plants to see. For example, for thousands of years, my ancestors have been taking ayahuasca, the plant ayahuasca, and having visions. And in those visions, they see themselves in the struggles with the outside world. They actually have visions that help inform how they behave and what they do. And the art is also in the language. Our language, our songs, our legends, we're losing our language, and we're losing our traditional knowledge. And our traditions that have to do with how we interact with our environment, we're losing some of that. And also, more than anything, we're losing this, on a global scale, we're losing the love of each other and the love for the world. And that's the most important.
Thank you. Before we continue, how are we doing for time? Are you anxious for it to...
We can carry on to 6, so we've got time. From 6 onwards, everyone's invited to the after party downstairs.
The problem with me is that I have to get back to...
You've got to...
because...
so up to you, Judy.
What time is it? I lost my phone is dead.
It's
5:40.
5:40.
Yeah. I really need to leave in 5 minutes.
Good. And then those who wish can stay here and take questions from the audience, because my impression is people are just starting to warm up.
Yes, I mean, I find it so beautiful. I mean, it's with great regret that I have to leave you, because it really is unfolding. And what I really want to say is that it is this kind of stimulus and unfolding that gives us something that we have lost. We have lost it, but we have access to it. Because every culture, okay, we say the West is now all scientific and evidence-based and all that, but once upon a time, every Western person was traveling that road. We were all connected to this. And when we listen to this, it is accessible, it is beautiful, we want it. It reawakens something that says, it is still there, excuse me. Yeah, it has not gone. Please reawaken and make these connections. And I think the experience of this coming together is pointing the way. And the other thing about climate change and the climate emergency is that it is an emergency. Let's throw our passion into this. Let's throw energy into this. Let's be purposeful. Don't drift. I mean, sometimes when cultures talk about dreams, and my culture talks about everything is alive, even a rock has a life history, people say, what? But all this kind of awareness, of deep awareness, different ways of knowing, different ways of seeing and of being, it is all yours. There's no difficulty getting at it. We can retrieve the reality and the seriousness of dreams. We can hone these abilities and not only drift into it, but be purposeful. Because the emergency is that the passion and our love for Mother Earth has to turn into real action that makes a difference. So I would thank you, and I would leave you, and I would hope that you make space for Sam's song. Maybe he should sing before more questions. Well, why don't you sing me out?
Okay.
Sing me out.
I have been known to clear rooms before. Following on from what you're saying about the dream, and this is a song from Scotland, from the Aberdeenshire Mountains, lowlands, a song of an encounter with a dreamlike being, and that being is a woman, but she is the spirit of the land. She is the entity that lives in and between the heather. And there's this love affair, but it really is about our protagonist's love for the land. And I'm going to borrow something from Brother Spirit and Brother Embrace, the two monks I interviewed earlier today, who were there in the lion's den of the Blue Zone, holding space, and they did something very dangerous that I think is what us artists are good at doing, pushing edges. And I'm going to invite us while I sing, and that includes us on the panel. I'd like us to hold hands. This is, and I know this is disgusting and dangerous, and we'll all get sick from this, but I just feel that this is what. Sorry?
I will hear you as
Okay,
you
as
sing.
you go. Okay, I'll hold Kit's hand. Hold hands. Bless you. Hold hands, because this is what all this is about, what us artists are. We are the gaffer tape. We are the creative gaffer tape between each other. This is the Fair of Balnafannon. Goodbye, Judy. She has left the building. Judy has left. I was going to the fair of Balnafannon. When I met a winsome dame, she was as fair as the Annan. I asked her name and the place of her dwelling, and she gave me this reply: I live amongst the heather, for I will build my love a bower by on clear crystal fountains, and on it I will plant all the flowers of the mountain. And I'll walk the mountainside and the dark glen so early, and I'll bring back the spoils to the one I love so dearly. Yay. Thank you.